So throughout the day, we've discussed multiple different questions on optimizing Kubernetes, different technologies like KubeVirt. But let's ask one of the basic questions. How important is it to have skills in Kubernetes and cloud-native technologies for your staff, prospective candidates, and students? Let's start off with you, Kanchana.
Sorry, I was looking at the can you repeat the question, please?
So how important is it to have skills in Kubernetes and cloud-native technologies for your staff, prospective candidates, and students?
I think for the staffs, Kubernetes has become very complex, right? I think a lot of the presentations you heard, they're changing the way that you use Kubernetes, like bringing in platform engineering, bringing new stuff. But yet, I think understanding the Kubernetes in your staff is pretty important because it's very easy for them to adapt then. And for the prospective candidates and the students, the important part is it's a technology that's going to last for the next 20 years or so. I know there was the talk about the WASM and all that. That will also come through, right? But having that knowledge and the skill will help you to not only work in Sri Lanka, but also service customers outside of Sri Lanka, or even when you leave Sri Lanka. If you do leave Sri Lanka, then it becomes important. Yeah.
Sounds good. Pulani, do you have any thoughts to add on to that?
Yeah, basically I feel like I represent sort of a startup company, and we do a lot of government digitalization. So at the moment, like even government, like most of the projects we do are like based on Kubernetes, and we do use Kubernetes a lot because of the easiness of the platform that brings. So I think as soon as we see someone is having some Kubernetes experience in CV, I think our techs get excited about it because it's very easy. If they already know it, then it's very easy for us to train them for the next steps and train them for the bigger things. So I think that's very important because there are many freely available resources that anyone can learn. So I think it's really important for a beginner or even a university student to know about it so that you'll have a better chance in getting selected. And of course, I think like Kanchana mentioned, I think it's must for the future because it's going to last. It's not going to go in recent years.
Sounds good. Lahiru, any thoughts on this?
So since Kanchana added a few thoughts on it, I would talk from more engineering perspective, right? So as an engineer, if I'm an engineer, I want to know how it works, right? Before I go and touch on it, right? So you go and run your workloads on AWS, Azure or GCP, and you see how things are getting scaled up or scaled down. What's the purpose of being an engineer if you don't know? So if you want to learn what's really behind those cloud technologies, good way to start is start learning Kubernetes, right? So that's where the magic happens in the modern clouds.
Sounds good. Harindha, any lasting thoughts?
Yeah, so continuing what Lahiru mentioned, so the thing is, today we see drivers, right, driving vehicles. So most of you have learned to drive a auto gear vehicle, right? So, but if you are given a manual gear vehicle, are you able to drive on a hill straight, right? So that is where we should understand what is under the hood, right? That helps for us to go beyond a simple operator. Right, because what we have seen is we started with data entry operators. So what they just have to enter something. But the next thing is then the public cloud claim. So there's a lot of trend in going to public cloud. How people use public cloud, easy way is click the console and implement something. But how many of them try to understand what is underneath? So when I started learning Kubernetes around 5 years back, I started from the Kubernetes the hard way, Kelsey Hightowers method, right? So then I got the understanding of where we can fail, what are the challenges. So you get the end-to-end picture. So that gives us the ability and skill to appreciate other ecosystems that are coming around Kubernetes. So that's why I think they should know the basics first.
Sounds good. Just to get an insight into how often you adopt Kubernetes or other cloud-native technologies, how much would you say a percentage of your organization is adopting these technologies? We'll start off with you, Harindha.
Yeah. So as a services company, we are not a product company, but as a services company, whatever the tools that are being built, that is being built with a cloud-native approach. Because we don't want to maintain on-prem data centers anymore. We like the flexibility coming from the public cloud. So to embrace that one and having the portability, we believe that going in the cloud-native approach is better. But it doesn't mean that everything has to be on a microservices-based approach. We have to select what is the most suitable one, because there are a lot of other options as well.
Sounds good. Kanchana, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, echoing what Harin said, it's important to, I mean, from our perspective, we are a product company, right? So 90% of our, the workloads, things we do are cloud native, but there is the 10% too that may not be cloud native. But also don't jump on things like microservices straight away if you don't really understand the complicated nature of it, right? But you asked the question related to the percentage, but percentage-wise, we are about 90%, I would say, mostly on Kubernetes, right? But we do have other workloads running on serverless, etc. as well, right? So it's not 100% Kubernetes, I would say.
Sounds good. Pulani, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I would say around 70%, because we moved Kubernetes to around 3 years back. So why did we move to Kubernetes? Because we got I think the same problems why the Kubernetes was invented. So we got the same problems, and I'm not going to discuss them since we discussed it a lot. So because of that, we as an engineering team decided that we want to move for that. And then we got some bigger projects. So if for say we manage the whole medical supplies distribution system across Sri Lanka, across 1,500 hospitals, including the procurement and the distribution, storage and all of it. So I think if we don't use something like Kubernetes for the server management and things like that, I would say it would have been a nightmare managing everything if we do it in a traditional way. So because of that, I would say we had to do it going with the flow. And at the same time, when it comes to adapting Kubernetes, I think, when it comes to some of our products, they're still in the not the cloud ready state, but I think it is very important for us to make it cloud ready and also to move it into the Kubernetes environment to be more productive and efficient.
Yeah. Lahiru, any lasting thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm on the little bit of away from Kubernetes, but the things that we learned from Kubernetes in the past, we are now adapting it for cloud-specific products as well. Now, for example, in my past career, I've worked in a very large corporation where they have all 4 clouds. So going into Kubernetes was their need at that time, right? But when we work on the service industry, you don't get the same big customers day in, day out, right? So you get small customers, highly influenced by the 3 major cloud providers. So they don't want to go out of it, right? But even though we have the passion to do it, we can't go out of it. But things like platform engineering is some of the good concepts that has come out from and GitOps, right? So those are some of the good things which have come out from Kubernetes and CNCF Foundation, so that we can adapt that. So some of the components that may not be directly used by the user, but for us to optimize our services, right? So if we write a CI/CD pipeline for one customer on Azure, right? We cannot reuse it on Google. So what we do is, as a company who sells software, we know we can utilize that same sort of DevOps pipeline across so many other customers. So we don't write in Azure, right? We use other technologies which is more open, which comes with Kubernetes, and we have that for our use. So that's where we mostly use Kubernetes toolset when it comes to our day-to-day job.
Yeah. That actually nicely leads me on to my next question. So speaking of the concepts, Kubernetes from its humble beginnings has gotten significantly more complex with providing much more functionality. So how exactly do you as a company, as an individual, cope with the added complexity and the amount of documentation you have to go to understand certain concepts now? Yep, Lahiru.
Yeah, so I think we are a little bit behind as my personal experience on that. But when you look at the overall industry, the platform engineering, there was a nice speech, right? So that's where the things that will go. And on the GPT side, I know that you have another question. I might be jumping the gun. So GPT can do lot of good things to overcome these complexities. Right, so in the past, we used to go to Stack Overflow to get something resolved. But now we don't go to Stack Overflow, we go to GPT, right? And the new students who are coming out doesn't know what is Stack Overflow sometimes, right? So we can use these other technologies around that to solve most of these complexities that are coming out from the Kubernetes environment or the infrastructure.
Sounds good. Kanchana, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I think the complexity, is the mic okay?
Yeah, go for it.
So the complexity is massive now, right? So I remember Kelsey Hightower, some of you know, who is a big DevRel person. He talked about the Kubernetes hardware. Actually, when he talked about the Kubernetes hardware, I would say that's actually about 10% of how complex it is now, right? So I think where the companies need to look at that, like you touched, and there was a nice talk about the platform engineering, lot more people are looking at abstracting Kubernetes away from the developer so they can focus on getting a business outcome to the customers, right? So I think as your companies grow, while Harin and Pulani and everyone said that you do need to have resources know about Kubernetes, but you need to make it simpler for them as well. And in a fashion that can keep on repeating things, that you don't have to do the mundane things all the time by yourselves, but get it from a platform instead. Right? That's where I feel like things are going.
Sounds good. Harindha, any thoughts?
Yeah, so the things getting complex. So it is part of the process, right? So if you have read RFC 1925, that is for the 12 truths of networking, it's like the problems what we have, we can solve in different levels. So we can abstract into different levels or move it to different directions. So the thing is like the Kubernetes as itself in the core, it is highly customizable, highly modular, right? Then the things that is coming around it, that's why it makes it more lucrative, right? But having said that, we have to make sure now, currently since we have a lot of components around it, the security aspect of it, right? When we have the complexity, the next part is the security. So if we can manage that one, there are a lot of things happening, the security, the observability part. So those are very essential things on running a production grade Kubernetes clusters, in my opinion. So I think it will go to that level, and the next one is the service mesh. So we have multiple clusters, multi-cloud. So the things are distributed, right? We are distributing things for the better availability, resiliency, but with that we add another level of complexity to manage that one. So if we have a proper process with a properly planned, then I think this should be a good way to go. Because with adding the Vasant story also, so I think there can be a lot of other developments happening on Kubernetes.
Sounds good. Pulani, any thoughts to wrap up?
Yeah, so I have a different flavor to add to that, because like since we do a lot of government projects, we do have a lot of restrictions. We cannot go to AWS or like those kinds, so we have to satisfy with the cloud we have, the SLT cloud within Sri Lanka. So in that, we do the manual deployment of Kubernetes. So we don't have that flexibility to use all the like fancy services that you guys might be using, which we love to do in future. But at this stage, I think even though with that capacity, I think we are doing like comparatively a great job than the traditional server management. And at the same time, I would say like to get the best use of it, I think you have to like go couple in with those like the best cloud providers, like without like restrictions. I think when we have, if we can have those restrictions maybe lifted up to some point, I think we can do wonders in like Sri Lankan ecosystem as well.
Sounds good. That actually follows me up onto my next question, and this I'll direct towards you, Pulani. What are the challenges of adopting a cloud-native approach from your regular old approaches?
Yeah, I think that itself is the biggest thing that we find, because when it comes to, because in one point I think it is the rules and the regulation, and like we are dealing with a lot of healthcare data, so the government wants them to be residing within the boundaries of Sri Lanka. So there are some limitations, and if we take a lot of like government or the local clients, they still have that mindset of having a local server and like managing it locally. So I think even though we run on Kubernetes, like there are very limitations. So I think that fear of like, you know, like people have in their minds, like, and we have to do a like better cost comparisons and like show them like you should move to this instead of local servers, or like sometimes like local servers may be profitable with the resources they have. So I think those are some of the main things I see in Sri Lankan context that.
Harindha?
So the question is around challenges, right?
Yep.
So the challenges are twofold. One is Pulani already mentioned, the restrictions and regulations, but we already have a Data Protection Act, right? So that things has to be regulated and come into place to operation. So that is one part. But mostly what we need is our young talent has to get that hands-on experience and the mindset of learning daily. So what we currently see is they are reluctant to learn the things under the hood. They are just consumers of the technology, but they don't know, or they don't want to spend some more time to explore what is it underneath and how I can make it something different and bring Sri Lanka to the next level. So if we can have that mindset, I think then we can make this Kubernetes story some more to a next level, so, right? So because now a lot of things are happening around the world. So why don't, as Sri Lankans, we do something from our own, because there are so many startups in the country. They can take some initiatives and not only focusing on the consumer level or the top abstraction level, but we can do things differently where we can optimize what we use.
Sounds good. Lahiru, any thoughts? The question initially was, what is the challenges of adopting a cloud-native approach?
Yeah, so again, I'll start from one of my experiences. So I touched Kubernetes way back in 2016 or 17, early parts, and I failed miserably, right? So I was supposed to give a solution to a company which runs, which has about a budget of about 1 million USD just for infrastructure, right? So they had all three flavors, as I said earlier. So, but when we started off, we didn't identify what Kubernetes was going to solve, right? So back then, we were highly glued to large clouds, right? So we didn't understand. So first thing, as a challenge for even, I think, Harindha touch engineers, first they need to understand what are the challenges that Kubernetes is going to solve, right? So that is the main challenge that we, as far as we don't understand it, that is the main challenge that we have, right? So then the next thing is, everyone in your organization has to comply, right? Why we are doing this? Because it's not easy, right? It's not an easy journey as you deploy something on a commercialized cloud, right? So you need to see, understand that you're going to go through a rough journey. You need to accept that. As far as you don't accept it, that's the next challenge, right? So once you do that, now I think that now things are better than back in 2016, right? So then the final thing is, now sometimes you ask why you want to invent so many things on your own when there are things outside given on a platter, right? So you need to get out of that. So that actually has to come from your engineering organization, that you should be able to take up the challenge, right? So as a leader in the engineering organization has to see whether my team is competent enough to take up a challenge like this, right? So that's the third thing that you need to first, because it's not easy, because now with remote working coming in, you don't see some of the guys who have joined, you don't feel their heartbeat, right? You know only after you give a difficult task and they come back, only that you know that he can deliver, right? So for me, it's a problem day in, day out to figure out whether I have the team to do this, right? In a large project, right? So those are the challenges. These are some of the challenges I think other speakers covered most. For me, I feel when I get into a Kubernetes project, and if it is a new area that we haven't touched much, and there are so many other new platforms coming up, I'm a little bit reluctant to go there without knowing whether we have really understood we are solving the correct problem with the correct tool set, and whether we are ready to go ahead that journey.
Sounds good. Kanchana, any thoughts to wrap up?
Yeah, I think most of it is covered. I actually quite agree what the other panelists also said. I think it is important for you all to understand what the Kubernetes is trying to solve before you jump on it and try to see, I do have a cloud native channel. Obviously, the problems we have before and now are kind of still the same, but maybe the scale is much bigger and the demand is much higher, right? But I think Harin touched a very valid point. For you all, even though the abstractions might come from platform engineering or other tooling, etc., understanding what we are trying to solve is very important. Whether you go on the cloud native or whether you stay on monolithic, you do need to understand what are we trying to solve. If you don't, then actually no matter how many trained certified engineers you have, you won't be able to solve. So one of the biggest challenges I do have, obviously, not enough resources available that actually understand that, right? It's not that people are not available. It's that people who understand what are we trying to solve is. Yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges.
Sounds good. So I think the next question is a question that answers itself by virtue of us being here. But the next question that I have is, how can someone get involved in the cloud native community? And why is it important to get involved as opposed to being just an observer on the sidelines? Kanchana, we'll start with you.
So I think some of you may have been for the last 5 years with us in the Sri Lankan, the Kubernetes community when we started in 2018. And it's grown to about, I think it's roughly around about 1,600 members now. And we do, so I think the first thing is like, I think Kavishka covered earlier about the importance of getting to the networks, getting involved with the community. I think that is important. And events like these, I think it's important to go. I know you have to sacrifice, you sacrifice more than what you wanted today. But that part is important because then you get to mingle with the others, find out, what is your company doing, what is Harin's company doing, what is Pulani's company members are doing, right? And it's not like stealing ideas, but actually you can contribute, right? And then what I also tell the others as well in our organization, go and talk to the community as what you have done, right? So the community can learn. So I think that's one of the biggest parts. Yeah.
No, that sounds good. Pulani, any thoughts?
Well, I think it's mostly like what Kanchana mentioned. So I think you need to have a community to share. Like, I think that's the main thing. So no matter what wonders you do in front of computer, but like, I think it begins magic when you share it with another people, when you say this is what you do and like do things like that. I think communities like this would generally help, and also not only to share what you do, but also to get help from your fellow colleagues when you struggle, when maybe we struggle as a company, maybe to get help from another company who had already done it. So I think that is why we need like these kind of communities, and that is why we all should be part of it.
Sounds good. Harindha?
Yeah, so the community is very important, right? So we might be representing different businesses and enterprises, but as Sri Lankans together, we have to be united and have many more communities like this, right? So then our younger generation can be benefited and go to the international level. So today what we mostly export to international market is the housemates. We have to cross that barrier, right? We have to send more influential, educated people where we can bring a lot of dollar revenue to Sri Lanka. So that has to come from each and every individual. So that's why the people from the industry has to get together and help Sri Lanka forming these communities. So when I got involved, I learned K3S from Kanchana's one of the webinars, right? So you did. So that's how I learned. So that gives us the opportunity to explore. So you have to have that passion. Individually, you have to have the passion, then you will explore. So having these communities help us to go to that level very fast.
Lahiru?
Yeah, so there are two questions, right? So how someone can get involved in the cloud native community. So the easiest way is to go and work for a company like WSO2, where they are breathe in, breathe out cloud native, right? Because there's a product company. That's a very good way if you think that you want to get into this kind of a community, right? Then the next thing is you figure out a small corner during your graduate level or somewhere where that still Kubernetes, there's no solution, right? So that's why there are so many projects being developed in the CNCF platform, which comes in and some are going out. Some are staying there for rest of us to use, right? So you scan through that, go through the project list, right? See what are the problems they are solving, right? So then you try to find out an idea there where you can contribute. As a small community, you get together your university team, right? I think Harindha mentioned about exporting something knowledgeable, right? So why can't our university graduates do one of their final year projects which can contribute to this kind of community, right? Which I think obviously not only Kubernetes, there are so many other things, right? You can write a low-code platform, right? For an example, which can be a billion-dollar company in the future, right? So I think it's always good to get involved in communities where I think other panelists said that it's learning, right? But how you get involved is you need to think out of the box and see what are the missing pieces, right? It's never going to finish, right? So you find out a piece where it's missing without trying to solve the traditional problems that we used to solve at the graduate level, right? Think about these things as well.
Yeah. That's actually very insightful. And again, going back to the initial point of you dabbling in Kubernetes since 2016, where do you think the future trends are going to go, and what is the future of cloud native technologies?
Yeah, so I think I already gave answer to that as well. So my feeling is one of the greatest barrier that we had going into Kubernetes is now going to be somewhat solved by platform engineering. That was the scariest place for me as an engineer who has used Kubernetes, because we had to do so many mundane tasks, right, to get something running and administrate it. Administration is a different thing. So when it comes to administration, some of the things that we repetitively do, right, we should be able to use a GPT kind of tool set and find the solutions. Then later you might need to read the GPT and go and apply it autonomously, right, without nobody getting involved. So those kind of things, I think, would be the future, right? And those kind of things, you can take it as a research and do it. That's what I feel.
Yeah. And Kanchana, as a company that, as Lahiru mentions, lives and breathes cloud native technologies.
Yeah, so I think the Kubernetes will become what Linux used to be 20 years ago, right? Everybody will start forgetting about, right, not going under the hood to do a lot every day-to-day basis. They will leverage out of the abstractions. But I also feel like WASM probably will also play a big role going forward. And who knows, right? To be honest, I don't have a crystal ball, so who knows what else will come up. Yeah.
Harindha?
Yeah, so anything can happen. So this current Kubernetes can be changed to a different level, right? So the way the other projects are getting added into the system. So, and I believe there will be a lot of new changes happening and it will keep evolving.
Sounds good. And even though it's not exactly directly relevant to the topic at hand, it would be a shame if I don't ask a question about generative AI and machine learning, since that's a buzzword going around in the community these days. What are your thoughts on generative AI and actually like how Sri Lanka as an entity is going to be prepared for that?
Yeah, so till last year, I think nobody was talking openly on AI, ML, but it was only on the closed doors people were using. Actually, all these public cloud providers had been using it for years, and this open AI came and put it a consumable product. So that started other things to come out, right? So it is very nice tool. Generative AI will help a lot of industries, lot of use cases. But the thing is, it's still early and it's still getting improved. If you see today, there are so many large language models coming out on open source. With that, we are getting a threat on the security as well, and then the data protection, how much it is unbiased. So those are other problems coming with those generative AIs. So we have to be very conscious on that one. Because if you put a question to ChatGPT 3 or ChatGPT 4 and the BARD, you will get 3 different answers, right? So how do you verify what is correct? So I'm in the opinion of we have to use tools, but also we have to have a mechanism to verify it. And the next thing is when you are using those tools, these are very public, open tools. So it is very much risky to share anything personal details, right? So we don't know the security of that one. So for that one, for the enterprises, they can have a copy of the foundational models and build on top of that, right? So that is where this Kubernetes infrastructure with the Kubeflow and all, so with the ML ops, so there is a nice journey to go that way. So that will help. So, but generative AI will replace a lot of mundane jobs because today everyone uses either ChatGPT or BARD to get some update, right? It will keep on improving. You have to use it. You have to use it, but use wisely and be cautious on what you are sharing there.
Sounds good. Pulani?
Yeah, I think it has few sides. So the first thing is, I think like if we incorporate some generative AI into some, let's say now a tool that we are doing. So the first thing is like our people, I don't know like what's the context in the world, but like in Sri Lanka, people are not ready to accept something generated by the program to be wrong. So I think that's the first thing. I mean, especially in our context, people like need to have that thought process, like this might be wrong, I should verify it. Because I think that is the main thing when it comes to using this generative AI at this stage. So like mentioned, last year, like we didn't know anything. I don't know how many students changed their research topics because of this, like the ChatGPT and different generative AI models. So it's very new, and I think early adoption at the same time is very important. Because like mentioned, like maybe the traditional AI topics are no longer valid with generative AI coming in. So I think it's really important that you adhere quickly to these changes, and also at the same time, there are so many applications that we can make, you all as developers, there are so many applications you can make through these generative AI APIs. So I believe like person who made like just after maybe the ChatGPT arrived, AI API arrived, like person who did that, to type emails, like the email integrator, that person made, I think, millions, more than even ChatGPT, like on the same night. So I think that's how you should utilize. You should quickly adapt, and at the same time, you should understand what are the bad sides of the technology as well.
Sounds good. Kanchana, any thoughts?
I think most of it is covered, but I think Sri Lanka shouldn't be afraid. But at the same time, I think, you all also said verification is very important because at the moment, some of the models seems to be very biased. because most of the content has come from North America and Europe and etc. So the decisions they make could be biased. I mean, coding is different. Coding can be, anywhere, so coding is okay. But then the privacy will get in, so Sri Lanka will have to figure out how do we actually protect the privacy, right? But also harness, right? Because the computing power has, the cost of computing power has dropped significantly. So we can commoditize the AI now that we couldn't do 20 years ago. AI is not new. AI has been there for like 50, 60 years, right? I mean, spell check is an AI, right? If you think about it, right? So it's been there, but I think we shouldn't be afraid, and also we should figure out, and even the government shouldn't try to put too many regulations, but they should try to see how to obviously protect our data, right? Not get out, because it could come and hurt us badly, right?
Sounds good. Lahiru?
Yeah, so I think other panelists covers mostly on the context of the Sri Lanka, right? So, so again, I'll touch on the engineers aspect. So, so for an engineer, this ChatGPT, for me, if I am doing some task, what I would use it for is to learn, right? You can copy the code also from that, but I would use it for learning purposes, because I can ask the question in a human language, right? I'll take a good example. So if I want to learn how you, if you want to separate your integrations, right? Now, when you write let's say there are two payment gateways that I need to integrate into my platform, but I don't know what is the architectural pattern that I should use, right? So previously what I had to do was I had to learn all the architecture patterns and see what fits to which problem. Now I don't have to do that. I have to say that, go to ChatGPT, I say, I want to create an application where I want to integrate two different payment gateways. Then it will write you the code which reflects one of your architectural pattern or a design pattern. And you know what is the design pattern is. Now you don't have to spend a lot of time to learn what you had to spend earlier, right? So that we can be smarter now, right? So that we can use to create a higher productivity. So as an engineer, I can deliver things not in 2 days, but in 1 day, right? So you should think that way, right? So even that will help in the Sri Lankan context also, right? So everybody is now picking up these techniques, right? So there's something called prompt engineering. I think you would have heard of it, right? So you need to learn what is prompt engineering. Then you will know how to ask questions from ChatGPT, right? So adapt those things. You can use that to optimize or be more productive than whom you are. So that is what I think we should, as engineers, we should do.
Yeah. Again, just pitching another question directly back at you. What is one piece of advice that you would give to the audience regarding learning cloud native technologies, going back to cloud native technologies?
Yeah, again, the answer is you join a company where cloud native is there, right? So that's the easiest and the fastest way that you can learn, because it's a swamp, right? So there are so many things. And the other thing is, you always try to not to learn the technology, but the theory, right? Starting from how a machine, how a CPU was built, right? Start from there, and what is the limitation of a CPU that cannot go past beyond a specific hertz, right? So how we created the networks, how the networks became faster, right? So learn those things, right? So those things, when you learn those things, and when you go to the industry, you will get challenges, right? Then you try to map your challenges to the theories, right? Then in the middle, you can pick the technologies to solve that, right? Now, what I see in the current market or the current academia is, you first teach mobile app development, then you teach web app development, right? It doesn't teach you the theories, right? So you know to solve a problem which is specific to that only. You don't know to solve a problem which is outside of that, right? So my idea is always learn the theory, right? Then you learn the infrastructure, and then see what are the tools available for us to learn it. So cloud native, it's not different to that. right? Learning cloud native is not different to that.
Sounds good. Kanchana?
I think most of it is covered again, but I think like even if you are not joining a cloud native company, you could contribute, right? You could join like these communities, and I think you touch a very valid point. It doesn't have to be even Kubernetes project. Go contribute, because that's the biggest way to learn, right? Because then you are like involved in that community, you understand why we are doing it, etc., etc. So it doesn't matter. I mean, there's so many open source projects around the CNCF itself that you can get involved. And there's a lot of community channels, etc., that can help you as well, right? So that's, yeah, keep learning. I think that's like, I still learn. I learn a lot today, honestly, right? From some of the talks, etc., right? So, yeah, you never stop learning.
Okay, sounds good. Harindha?
Yeah, so I fully agree on both the panelists. So the thing is, you have to have your fundamentals correct. Whatever the technology we talk about, public cloud, generative AI, everything, it runs on three main things. First, networking, then compute, then storage. You have to know these three things. Then, on top of that, we do virtualization, right? On that virtualization, only this platform as a service comes in. So Kubernetes, to scale like that, it is on a virtualized platform. And then the security part. So these fundamental things, if you know, it's not only cloud native, whatever the other technology, you will learn quickly. Because it's like the days we learn in the A levels and O levels, what we learn, physics, chemistry, biology, right? So if you drill more down into that one, it goes to that level. So in the networking side, so yeah, network, compute, storage, if you know the fundamentals, and especially the security. So then you can learn anything. So other thing, and also one advice is, first you have to master at least one technology. Then you try to get a complementary another technology stack, right? So that you master at least two technologies, then have a breadth of the other technologies. So it doesn't need to be fully deep, but mile wide, right? So that is how you can be more relevant, and it is easy for you to understand new stuff.
Sounds good. Pulani, any thoughts to wrap up?
Yeah, so I think learning these days is very simple compared to like 10 years before, because everything is out there. So I think like before you code something or before you think of a concept, just like go and see like if there are already cloud native applications or to support that. So if you just search it, I think in AWS or Azure or like GCP or whatever, you get the tutorials itself. And then you get the test environment there as well. So I think it's the best way to learn, just like, you know, try it out, your techs, your kicks. So I think it's like, it should be in your blood, you know, just to like maybe look at new things, like how we can do this differently. I think through that, you'll be able to get to know a lot. Maybe you can introduce, because like not everyone know, like, because there are thousands of it, not everyone know like what each one does. So maybe you experiment and you can tell your maybe like your manager or the CEO, now I find this method, now this looks good, than the traditional method you follow. So I think that's where like, that's what we expect from the younger generations as well.
Sounds good. You made an initial comment about how some of the products that you have built had helped the health sector of the country, and the next prompt is basically the idea that some of your companies have built tooling and software products. So given the growth of cloud-native technologies, how can Sri Lanka specifically benefit from it? We'll start off with you, Pulani.
Yeah, I think that's a little difficult question for me, because like most of the things that we do are like the services-based software. So because of that, we might have build some tools, but they are like not, because we run most of the things on SLT cloud, so it's like very primitive compared to like the platforms that we operate, the support that by the native technology, it's not very much. So maybe I would pass it on to different panelists because of that. So I would say like despite of like whatever the platform or the support that you do, I think optimization or like building tools to like optimize whatever the thing you do, like not to do the something manually next time. I think that's where we should go forward with.
Yeah. Harindha?
Yeah, so it's two folds. One is the product side, other one is the services side, right? So product side is a different story, and you have product engineering and product development part. But where I'm coming from is mostly on the services side. So what we try is we operate on a lean and agile model. So where we try to reduce the waste by using a lot of tools. So most of these tools are developed internally on a cloud native approach using cloud resources. So that is how we are trying to bring the value to our clients, right? So same tools we can use in international clients as well. So, but product thing is totally different. I think somebody else can add us.
Kanchana, let's go for
Yeah,
it.
I think the product is kind of obvious, right? But I think, what Harin said, Sri Lanka also has the opportunity to do services. But because we don't have, obviously, like our neighbor, massive scale of resources, we need to kind of learn to automate some of that. That's why the tooling is very important, right? So the services team to understand what kind of tooling we could use to automate. So if we have, we need 100 people to do, we could do it 10 people, right? Like think about Nokia, Finland, right? Similar size to us. Obviously it's still small in population, but the Nokia was a great success because of they thought about like how could we scale it, right? It is obviously a product, but still Sri Lanka could do that with the services, right? So, but we do need to definitely take the advantage of both products as well as the services, right? Yeah.
Lahiru, any thoughts to wrap up?
No, I think Harindha covered the service side of it. So I also gave an example how we did this platform engineering. We are actually using those kind of tool sets to automate and make ourselves more waste less, right? It also helps. Now, for example, what we usually do is when we create a tool, when a newcomer joins us, right? We get them to work on the tools, not on the real client product, right? So they can play around, they can mess up our clusters, they can do so many things with those tools by changing it, right? So when they go to the production, they know what they have done, what are the mistakes that they have done. So building tooling is very important because that's where you actually get your hands dirty, right? So we are investing. So mostly what we have done on the DevOps optimization sides, scripting on scripting the test data generation. Now for us to let's say for us to run a performance test, right? You need to create a cluster and you need to generate the data load required for the cluster, right? So we use some of the tools which are already there, right? Which use for to scale up, scale down our cluster with limits, right? So we also want people not to run a test data which could go and kill our IT infrastructure budget for the entire in one day, right? So we need to build tools to prevent that as well, right? So those are the things that we usually do. So because one night you sleep, you have $0 balance, but next day morning it has gone to about $1,500, right? So we need to create tools to prevent that as well. Scale up, scale down is good, but you need to have a control. So for that we are creating tools.
Yeah, that makes sense. Unfortunately, we don't have all the time in the world, so one final prompt for the panelists today. And we'll start with you, Lahiru. Any final thoughts that we should let the audience and the community take away from this session today?
Yeah, I think that's all what we talked. So I'll just summarize. For me, if I am a Kubernetes engineer that I want to take away, so there will be a lot of things to learn. Don't get afraid by that. Learn your basics. Attend to these kind of community events a lot more. I think I think in Sri Lanka we get very less chance to attend to something like this, right? Because we usually have events which are sponsored by a specific vendor, right? But we don't get a community attending much. We had it about 5-6 years ago. We had a lot of them. We had meetups.com. There was a lot of meetups happening, but I don't see none of the communities are active now. There are few, right? So always try to attend them. So that way you can learn from others. So as a summary, what I feel is I see a very good crowd here today, which I haven't seen in a Sri Lankan context before when it comes to a community forum. So that's really good. So always try to be very open and try to learn from these communities and try to be productive as much as possible.
Sounds good. Pulani, any thoughts?
Yeah, so finally what I have to say is I think everyone who here proves something like on a Saturday, like committing like half of your day coming here, that means a lot, you know, like you might have learned a lot, and at the same time I feel that you're very proactive and active in this arena. So I think in what I have to say is like Sri Lanka need a lot of like tech talent, so like mentioned all over. And because of that, you just don't be restricted to the day job that you do. Just like try to contribute to open source community, and also try to build some of the like maybe tiny products, maybe add-ons and things like that, and try to experiment. Maybe that might be the bigger hit for you in like next 1 year. Who knows how things get hit these days, right? So I think always be proactive and always be up with the technology, always be up with the community, and always be someone keen and interested in learning new things and trying out new things. So I think you are sort of blessed people to be in technology in this crisis situation. So we are like mostly like the only job saved, maybe like the only secured place to be.
Harindha?
Yeah, so both Lahiru and Pulani mentioned a lot of things. So what I would like to take as the last thoughts. So if you haven't, how many of you have read the Phoenix Project book? So only one hand raised. How many of you have read the Unicorn Project book? The same person, okay. So all of others can read those two books. So that give you a nice, it's like a story. That will give you a good background on how to adapt into that culture. So it's a culture. It's not some one or two technology. It's a culture of learning as well. So DevOps, it's a culture. So learn from that one. So then we will be able to reduce waste and operate in lean agile method. So that is what the foundation of Kubernetes as well, in my opinion. So that is my final thoughts.
Kanchana, the final take of the day?
Yeah, I think be curious, come to events like this, contribute. I think you said like, don't just stick to your day job, right? Because I think your employers can only do so much, right? Even when I was at your age, I thought, why can't they, do this and etc. But you got to be curious. You got to go and learn. And that's how you actually explore your boundaries. And you might find like how Kavishka did, in terms of finding like DevRel is a new challenge, right? I'm happy to take that. And Patum earlier talked about his challenges in learning Kubernetes, etc., right? And that's how you overcome and be curious, right? And obviously you can come and help the next year's event, right? And that's a good way to, I guess, contribute. Yeah.
No, we definitely appreciate that. But unfortunately, as all good things, even this panel discussion must come to an end. Let's have a round of applause for our panelists, ladies and gentlemen.